Hi guys, this is Mrs. Allison. Today we are going to begin working on trig word problems. They're not as scary as they sound. I know most people when they hear word problems panic a little bit, but we are going to look at some steps at how we can solve a trig word problem, and I think you'll see it's quite easy. So the first thing I want to do is review with you the mnemonic device we have to be able to set up trig ratios. So we have the mnemonic device SOHCAHTOA. And remember, SOHCAHTOA are those three words. SOHCAHTOA stands for the sine of an angle, and we're going to use theta equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. And then we have the cosine of the angle equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then finally we have the tangent of theta equals the opposite over the adjacent. And remember, all of those come from a right triangle, and it all depends on where you are standing. Let's give this angle right here the name theta. The little theta doesn't want to work. Here we are at theta. And picture yourself standing at that angle. If you're standing here, picture yourself as a little person standing here. And you are looking at the sides of your triangle. The first one that we should automatically know is we should know the hypotenuse, because the hypotenuse is always across from that 90 degrees. So anytime we see this 90-degree symbol, look at where it's pointing. That's always going to be our hypotenuse. And if we're standing here, at this angle right here, looking across from me is going to be my opposite. So this side will be my opposite, and then what I'm standing on will be my adjacent. Okay, so those are the three trig ratios we are going to focus on. Same ones we've been working on the last week. So let's go through the steps to be able to solve a word problem. The first thing that we want to do is we want to draw a triangle. Sometimes the triangle is given to you. Sometimes the triangle is not given to you. So the first step should always be to draw your triangle. The second step that we want to be able to go through, or that we want to do with solving trig word problems, is we want to label the triangle. So oftentimes information will be given to us about the problem, and it will help us to identify which trig ratio we're going to use, whether we're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. So the next step would be to label the triangle using the information that was given. The third thing that we want to do is we want to create and solve an equation. So I'm just going to write create and solve an equation, and that means we're going to set up our trig ratio. So let's look at what that looks like. All right, here's our first example. And on this video, for some reason, the picture is not showing up as well. Hopefully you can see it a little bit. You have it in front of you on your notes. So here would be an example. This would be an example where a picture is already drawn, but we're going to look at the words that are given to us to see how we can draw a triangle from it. So we're going to follow those three steps. So this says, from a point on the ground, 47 feet from the foot of a tree, the angle of elevation to the top of the tree is 35 degrees. Find the height of the tree to the nearest foot. Now we're actually going to look a little bit more at angle of elevation and angle of depression tomorrow, but this one had a triangle already given, so we're going to use the information that's here. Okay, so the first thing we would do is we would draw our triangle. And you can see that this triangle is already drawn for you, so I just typically draw any right triangle. Doesn't matter which direction it's facing. It's really not that big of a deal. It's just to get the point of the picture across. And I know a tree is going to stand vertically, so that is where the 90 degrees comes from. And then it says from a point on the ground, 47 from the foot of the tree. So this point right here is 47, or sorry, this point is the foot of the tree. So the distance is 47 feet here. And that's where you can see the 47 that's written there. So I'm just going to draw over that 47. And then it says the angle of elevation of the tree is 35. We'll look at why this is the angle of elevation tomorrow. And then it says find the height of the tree. So that's my x. So I've drawn and labeled my triangle based on the information that's given. So I've gone through step 1 and step 2 already. So now what I need to do is I need to create an equation. So let's look at what this equation looks like. First thing I'm going to do is I know that I'm standing right here at this angle, this 35-degree angle. Picture yourself standing there. Okay? So if I'm standing here, I know that across from the 90 is the hypotenuse. Now, I don't actually need the hypotenuse for this problem, but it's always good just to label it, then we have all the information out there. I know that the side I'm standing on is the adjacent side, and then across from me is the opposite side. So, which trig ratio, if we go back to that mnemonic device of so, ka, toa, which one of these, so, ka, toa, am I going to use if I'm standing here at 35, I'm trying to find the opposite, and I have the adjacent? That's right, I'm going to use the tangent. So I'm going to use the trig ratio for the tangent, and here's what that looks like. So I'm going to choose the tangent, and it's always tangent of the angle, and the angle that I happen to have is 35 degrees, so the tangent of 35 degrees equals the opposite, and my opposite is x, over the adjacent, 47. Remember, that's what SOHCAHTOA means. Tangent is the opposite divided by the adjacent. So here I have this trig ratio. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for x. To solve for x, I am going to multiply both sides by 47 to undo the 47 from the denominator. So what I'm actually going to type in my calculator is 47 times the tangent of 35 degrees. Again, make sure your calculator's in degree mode. If you haven't replaced the batteries and you haven't been to a different class like physics, your calculator probably is in the same mode you left it in last time. It wouldn't hurt to just check and make sure your calculator's in degree mode. So then I can type in 47 times the tangent of 35. We know that equals x, and what I get in my calculator is that x is 32.9. Now it did say find the height of the tree to the nearest foot, so that means x would be 33 feet. All right, let's try another one. This time, we don't have a picture given to us, so I want to look at how we can go through, which is the very first step, and to draw a triangle. So this one says, a ladder leaning against a building makes an angle of 78 degrees with the ground. The foot of the ladder is 5 feet from the building. How long is the ladder? Okay, so I am going to draw a triangle. And it doesn't really matter what the triangle looks like. I am certainly no artist. So here I have a triangle, and this is going to be my ladder. Just picture, ooh, yikes. This is going to be my ladder leaning against a building. Okay, so it says that right here that it makes an angle of 78 degrees with the ground. So the ladder to the ground makes this angle 78 degrees. So I'm going to label that angle as 78 degrees. And then it says the foot of the ladder is 5 feet from the building. So again, just like with the tree one, the foot of the ladder is 5 feet from the building. And we're going to assume the building is at a 90-degree angle. This time, this one asks, how long is the ladder? So we're going to label the ladder as x. All right, so we've gone through and we have drawn a triangle. We have labeled the triangle using the given information. Now what we're going to do is create and solve an equation to find the missing side or angle. So first thing I'm going to do is label all my sides. I know that across from the 90 degree is the hypotenuse. I know that if I'm here at this angle 78, right here, if I'm standing there, then the 5 feet that it's referencing is my adjacent. And just because I can, I'm going to label this other side as my opposite. I don't actually need that information. So now I need to create an equation. So I've labeled all my sides, and what I know is that if I always have SOHCAHTOA written at the top of my paper, I won't forget which trig ratio I need to use. So I know that the side I'm trying to solve for is a hypotenuse, and the side I have is the adjacent. So which trig ratio uses adjacent and hypotenuse? That'd be the cosine. So let's set up the equation. We would set it up the cosine of the angle, so cosine of 78 degrees equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Now this one requires a little bit more work to solve because my variable's in the denominator. So I am going to get rid of my denominator by multiplying by x. It makes it not quite as pretty because we get the equation x times the cosine of 78 degrees equals 5. Well, I need to get x by itself, so I am going to divide both sides by the cosine of 78 degrees. Cosine of 78 degrees. So what I'm actually going to type in my calculator, I'm going to move over here to the right, is I'm going to type in 5 divided by the cosine of 78 degrees. And we type that in our calculator just as it's written. 5 divided by cosine of 78 degrees. And we get that x equals 24.0405 maybe if we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So x equals approximately a 24-foot ladder. See, you've just solved trig word problems. So now what you're going to do is you're going to work on your homework for solving trig word problems. Thanks for listening.